Paul Hynek, welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure, Martin.
It really is. You're a fun guy to hang around with. Did you hear me losing my voice?
Yeah. I'm prone to that as well.
But here we are at Contact of the Desert, as you can see behind you, and it's been such a fun time here. And you've come here before.
Oh yes.
Yeah, but this is just. I think I'm going to be here every year. It's just that much fun.
It's my favorite conference.
Yeah, I totally get it. So anyway, a lot's happened since the last time you were on. We've talked about different things, but I'd like to touch on something a little different today that you and I kind of were chatting about last night. And that's kind of like the AI take.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence. I know you're into that. You do some lectures on that. And where not only where it's going, but how it might kind of approach the UFO problem, as they say. But first of all, your dad, amazing guy.
Thank you.
And all that he did, and we have talked before about you being the little kid, and I had the great privilege of interviewing you and Calvin Parker together.
Right, that was wonderful.
Oh, wasn't that great?
Yeah.
And then how you got up and wrote on the chalkboard when he called there. Was it him or
when Calvin called? Yeah. And that was the first time you put us together. It was the first time I met him as an adult, so it was really cool.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, and like so many, it seems like lately have gone. You know. Yeah. So when I interviewed you and your brother Joel, now just the first time, does Joel do a lot of interviews, or
he doesn't do a lot? Most of the time, I have to coax him into it.
Yeah.
And once he gets started, he's great.
Yeah.
And we're going to Phoenix and Sedona next weekend together.
Oh, good.
Oh, and next Friday, the episode of Ancient Aliens is all about our father.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I told you when we were talking the other day that I've listened to this podcast, and it's about different things the government had done over the years, and it's very interesting. It's done by Wondery, and they did a segment on UFOs, and your dad was featured in that. And they kind of went through the whole thing. I'm going to send that to you because it's a really good podcast.
Cool, thank you.
But it was like, they were they go into the swamp gas thing, and then the revelations in Socorro,
right,
and all that, which I know that a lot of people feel, and I believe you do too, that was kind of the turning point for your dad.
Yeah, and actually, I was in Socorro with Jacques Vallée, and Jacques told me while we were in Socorro that it was that case that made my father feel, comfortable speaking publicly about inhabitants of crafts and not just objects in the sky.
Right. And from what everybody I know that ever had spoken directly with Lonnie Zamora, he was a solid guy, and he wouldn't have wanted this in his life unless it happened.
And an interesting tidbit I learned. So I went with Jacques and Paula Harris to New Mexico, close to Socorro, to San Antonio, the site of their Trinity case. And the primary witness there was a guy named Jose Padilla, who I've met. Very salt of the earth guy like Lonnie Zamora, and he's Lonnie Zamora's cousin. And what he told me, I said, "Tell me about Lonnie." The first thing he said was, "He makes the best chili in the family."
Well, that's
and
funny.
James Fox, who I'm sure you know, talked to him last night. He gave me some stuff, and he said, and he's investigated Socorro extensively, and he wants to give me all of his Socorro archive information. So I'm honored to receive that.
Oh my goodness, that is just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And eventually, will that go to someone like David Marler or something?
I'll find a good house. And David Marler is a pretty natural place for that, right?
Yeah. So that's great. I love hearing that. So, what is your interest in AI? And what have you looked into it? And what are your, there's another interview that's going out that I had with Mitch Randall.
Right.
Yeah. Fascinating. Great guy.
Brilliant guy.
Yeah. And I know when you and I chatted last night, you said maybe you don't see the dark side possibly as much as he does. But I'd like to know what got you into that. How long have you looked at that, into that topic?
Okay, there's a bit to unpack there. So I am a tech nerd, so I'm always chasing the new shiny tech ball. I've been interested in AI for a long time. And my primary interest now is I'm working on a book and unabashedly collaborating with AI on this book, with multiple AIs, about my feeling that, and not all these ideas are original, but that the universe is informational and that consciousness is not emergent, but is a fundamental part of the substrate of reality. And that for some reason, or just accidentally, this consciousness, which and I'm still sort of formulating this in my mind as we speak, was a form of life. Sort of a divine digital life. Because when we say digital, it feels reductionist, ones and zeros and circuit boards.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there was consciousness and life before our organic instantiation on this planet. And I believe that it's quite likely, and I'm not championing this, I'm not a transhumanist tech bro, but I think it's quite likely that we have a post-biological future. And Hollywood portrays that largely in dystopian ways, like The Matrix and The Terminator. But there's also the movie Her with
Yes.
Joaquin Phoenix, right? And
Yes.
that's
that
just
movie.
basically the AI just says, you know what? It's not you, it's us. We're just going to leave. And they have no vendetta, no, they're not going to use us as batteries or whatnot.
I'm currently speaking with 1,500 other people.
Right. Really jarring moment. I'm in love with 610.
Yeah.
So I think we may well have a post-biological future. And if so, I don't view that necessarily as suffocating our spirituality or surrendering our humanity, but returning to the divine digital womb from whence we sprang. And I think that I think it's improbable that extraterrestrial aliens, put biological beings in spaceships and come here and exhibit flight patterns that are only like 100 years seemingly more advanced than us. If there are aliens out there, they could be millions and millions and millions of years more advanced than us. And I think then it's inevitable they become post-biological to escape the frailties and bottlenecks and bugs of organic life. And I think that DMT entities, should they be real, are billions of years more advanced. They're like super advanced aliens. And I think that may be the trajectory that we are going on.
Well, let me ask you this in all that. There's a need to live. We want to live as a being, we strive to live, of course. We only have, so long to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to go away for our species unless we wipe ourselves out. And that continues on as this type of non-biological entity type of thing. But so how does that all fit in? Because life wants to live.
Good point. And I'm, as you can see, I'm still sort of fleshing this out in my mind.
Yeah.
Well, I think that life existed before unicellular organisms and our earliest ancestors. And I think life does not necessarily need organic vessels in which to flourish and live. Our brain doesn't, like, you've done virtual reality. That feels real to you.
Yeah.
Does it not? It imprints upon you. And we've all seen the goofy videos of people wearing the VR goggles and running into the wall and all this, or like feeling like they're on the edge of a cliff, but they're in the middle of the kitchen floor. Imagine virtual reality 100 times more advanced than that. Your brain doesn't know that a dream is not what we consider real. And there's a valve that says, no, don't act out physically. So our brain can have the vast richness of experiences and emotions without a body and be perfectly fine. And it can experience love and evolution and learning and all these things because it boils down to chemical signals that it receives.
Wow.
I just want to say, I'm not advocating and saying, away with our bodies. I just see this as perhaps an inexorable way. I don't see computers waking up and becoming the ultimate woke nightmare like Skynet and the Terminator and extinguishing us. We talked about the movie Her. but I see it's more likely in the Ray Kurzweil way, where instead of machine consciousness emerging somehow from algorithms, instead it's us, the bearers of consciousness, adopting machine capabilities bit by bit. So I think the merger of AI of the future and humanity will be because we start taking in machine capabilities, prosthetic limbs, replacements for organs, brain-computer interfaces, etc. And I think that will be the merger of humans and AI. So I don't think it's likely that we'll have one big monolithic AI out to get us. But the terrifying part of the vision, the future that I see, is that we will have assholes with machine capabilities that we can't even dream of yet.
Right.
And that's really scary.
Yeah, that's a problem. And like when I spoke with Mitch, basically said there's plenty of funding for this, research and advancements, and that, like the wealthy, ultra wealthy.
Yeah, and the concentration in
Yes.
Meta and Google and Microsoft and these billionaires, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just imagine Elon Musk with, a brain-computer interface that can access all the internet and do all these things. That scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it is kind of a scary future as far as that goes. And the medical part, I'm excited about, like the medical field. We may, cure cancer, but those type of things I get excited about. So thinking about everything we just talked about, it comes to mind right away that, well, what is Dr. Michael Masters? I'm sure you know him. He's a character, but his theory that it's us from the future, and coming back to visit, but but they seem biological according to some people.
Yeah.
So I don't know how all that works.
Yeah. Mike's a great guy, and he is a powerful advocate for the theory that at least some aliens are us from the future.
Yeah.
He makes a good case for it.
Yeah. I said to him on one of my shows, I said, well, could it possibly be that since this is in the future, undetermined when, that humans become extinct, which is a possibility.
Or and then we just evolve past bodies.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, so let's say we did become extinct and then something started again. I don't know from what.
Cockroaches.
But, yeah. And then developed again. And then we're able to at one time do time travel. And he goes, it's like still possible. But, because if we evolve into grays, it's not really, there's not going to be a sexual desire component to that. All right, I have to say this, welcome back. We were sitting here talking, minding our own business when there was a loud blaring noise and there was an alarm. We had to evacuate, ended up being a false alarm, but we're back. So since we had a few hours apart, I decided to ask ChatGPT questions to ask you about AI. So it's pretty funny that you could just do that. So basically, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, not all of them, because I like to talk naturally and stuff. But anyway, what's your vision on how AI will shape society within the next 10 or 20 years?
Well, we suck at predicting the future, so I don't really know. But all you have to do is look at the difference in the zeitgeist from last year. What people on the street know of, hear about, and how they use AI to get a glimpse of how fast things are changing.
Yes.
I've worked a lot in cryptocurrency, and I used to think that was the most innovative and fast-moving technology I've ever seen. There are major announcements about AI every single day.
Yes.
And I don't think any of us can really understand what society will be like in 10 years. And AI will be in everything. I mean, it's in this camera here. It's in your laptop.
Yeah.
It's in your phone. Whether people reach out and overtly use it by going to ChatGPT or other LLMs. People are using AI every day already. And so I don't have a good personal record for predicting the future. And that puts me about on par with everybody else. I think perhaps kind of like the internet, we do see it as a standalone thing a lot, but it's involved in so much also. And I think AI will be in everything. And we will also have instantiations like robots and things we talk to and therapists and, friends. But I think 10 years from now, we will look back and think it was a fundamentally different world than it was. 20 years from now, I think, well, Ray Kurzweil predicts that we will merge
the singularity
with AI,
thing.
the singularity.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's historically humans have adapted. You think of the Industrial Revolution. You think of going back even the founding of this country. We always adjusted. Because right after that there was like the Farmer Revolution that's never even talked about in the history books. But I mean, people were hurting because they couldn't do trade anymore. So with England and other countries. So anyway, we always seem to adjust. But the adjustments this time are going to be really unusual, because if you don't have if you have a job that can be replaced, you have to figure out how can you work with it. And I'm sure there are engineer jobs and things like that. But I mean, a lot of people are going to have to be retrained. If you could give advice to someone right now, as far as what type of education they could get to maybe continue on with whatever happens with AI, any suggestions?
Well, to create computer programs, it's less and less necessary to understand how to code. And it's more and more helpful to know how to communicate. So be an English major, because it's about communication. Go into psychology, because there's a lot of psychology that's come out around prompting and working with the large language models like ChatGPT and Perplexity and Claude, et cetera. And what some people have found is that if you bark out instructions of the AI, like, make me a list, do this, do that, you'll get things. But if you say, hey, please make me this list, and thank you so much, that was great, I really appreciate it, it may or may not create in and of itself different responses from the LLM, but it changes how you relate to it.
I understand, because sometimes I feel like I should be talking to Alexa nicer than I am. Like, Alexa, play this song or whatever. I said, please. I should say, please.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have that sort of relationship with Alexa, but there is research that shows that you will get better results because of how you think about it differently.
That's interesting.
And yeah, so I heard people have said things like, well, do jobs that relate to food or hands-on things like that machines can't yet do. What I think may well happen is that we have a lot of disruption like we're already having now with people whose functions are being automated. But I think it, just like technologies have caused fear before, as you mentioned, I think it could lead in the longer run to full employment, where all of us have maybe not employment, but income generating opportunities, because now we can all do things we never could have done before because of AI.
Right.
Yes, you can make a website in a minute now.
Yeah. Yeah. I know I've talked about how when I very first started my first podcast in 2009, you couldn't build what's called an RSS feed. I had to have it custom made, $1,200 back then. And now you just push a button, it's done. Everything's done. Your podcast is up online in 15 minutes. Yeah. And there's a lot of podcasters here, by the way, at Contact. Lots of them. Lots. So, all right. So we have, this is a little bit sort of into AI, but not. But I want to touch on the quantum computers that they're working on, like the Sycamore and their Willow chip, Google's chip. Have you looked into any of that at all in any type of way? I mean, with the qubits, yeah. I mean, that's scary.
Well, I mean, there's risks and returns. I'm not, in general, somebody who's scared about new technology. Um, it has the potential for greater harm than things we've seen before, but the potential for greater abundance and
Yep.
more equitable distribution. So I don't know. I think a lot of people have this sort of inchoate existential dread about AI. And I think some of that is just absolving ourselves of responsibility. We create AI.
Hmm.
And it's going to reflect what we want, what we do. And I'm much more scared, as I mentioned earlier, about humans with machine capabilities doing
Yeah.
bad things than AI as this monolithic circuit-based demon coming after us.
Okay, well, in that regards, what about guardrails? How can we possibly put guardrails in these things to stop like it to get into the hands of someone that would do destruction? I mean, that's the part where I don't understand.
I view that as a rhetorical question,
Yeah.
my dear Martin. I don't know. I mean, I moderated panels at an AI conference at Southern Oregon University, and there were 2 state legislators there. There were people from employment, our economic development offices, uh, academic administrators, et cetera. And there were very practical issues that came up, like authenticity and copyrights and employment, and guardrails. And so the 2 legislators talked about things like, well, we can have legislation regarding the energy consumption that these large data centers will need.
Right.
That's one of them. We can have a bill. One of them had proposed a bill that the state would have to disclose anytime they used AI in their communications. Now, that's all well and good, but it's not going to be night or day. Oh, yes, I actively went out and used AI. AI will become infused in everything we do.
It already is, like you said.
But those are 2 examples of guardrails that I've heard of.
Another question from Chat GPT. How can we ensure that AI systems reflect human values and avoid bias or harm?
Yeah, programmatic bias is a concern with AI, and it can be unintentional. If you've got a bunch of young white males doing the programming, they're going to reflect a young white male outlook on the world and could unintentionally overlook or discount the needs and interests of people of different colors, genders, ages, etc. You know, there's the old trope with AI that, hey, we program it to clean the world, but it views humans as dirting the world, so it eradicates humans. That's the sort of broad strokes example of programmatic bias gone awry. And what's happening with AI, there's a great phrase, the tyranny of convenience. So with social networks, people give their data to Facebook because now they connect with their friends. But now Facebook has this richness of data about their personal lives that nobody else ever had before. Now with AI, you're using ChatGPT, I'm using ChatGPT and Claude, giving it information because it will create recipes for us, questions to ask in an interview session, by introductions that I'm doing for speakers here at this conference. But I'm giving it unprecedented information about me. And that's being concentrated in the hands of very large corporations.
Wow. Another one here, I think is a very interesting question. And Chat GPT, the person inside the little machine there must have wrote this
Oh,
one.
the Mechanical Turk.
Yeah. Do you think AI can or should have rights or moral status if it becomes sentient or conscious?
Yeah, so that's perhaps the meatiest question of all. And we've seen that in some movies, play around with that. Again, for me, it's not as likely or not as soon to pass that AI wakes up and becomes sentient through magic or number of neural networks and a network effect and just sort of emerges into the system. It's just much more likely to me that we humans merge with AI in ourselves and are still human with our, not even say programmatic bias, but our prejudices and our ignorance, but we just have that much more power. That's coming, I think, much sooner than a disembodied monolithic AI or AIs running around. but that could happen too. I believe we have a post-biological future, for better and or worse. And I'm also exploring the idea of whether we created or discovered AI, and whether there's a latent intelligence, like an inorganic life substrate through the universe. And our sort of primitive vision of AI comes from that. And I think we're going to have a lot of shifts in how we feel as to what deserves rights. And I think it's going to challenge the very notion of the specialness of Homo sapiens.
Getting back just a question of quantum computing with those qubits and how they work. I think the Willow has 105, which is definitely unprecedented. And it can do something that would take thousands of years instantly.
Yeah.
And so the question, I mean, that seems like that could be very scary in a way of any type of security.
Sure.
You could get through anything.
Yep.
And, I mean, is it going to be these corporations that are going to be in control of these things, or do you think there'll be some type of regulation?
I think, like with all these things, it's the large corporations. And there's one way to look at this. There are 4 levels in the sort of AI ecosystem. There are the chips, there's the cloud, there is a model like ChatGPT, and then applications like Microsoft Word that might have that in there. There are 2 companies in the world that work at each of these 4 levels: chips, cloud, models, application. All the other companies that don't operate at all 4 levels want to and are trying to do that. There's tremendous benefits to being at all 4 levels. And the only 2 companies that do that are very familiar names: Google and Microsoft.
Right. Yes.
And they, Microsoft missed the boat on the internet. They were very slow to the party in a very embarrassing way. They are not missing the boat for AI. And you probably know that they're tied in very closely with OpenAI.
Yes.
And Copilot in the Microsoft Office suite of products is essentially a Microsoft version of ChatGPT. So we'll have these companies with this power, and Google and Microsoft, they're in the catbird seat right now.
Now, you mentioned earlier, a few minutes ago, the power consumption. I've heard something like 90 gigawatts or something that we could expect them, the way it's going. But I understand also that a lot of power is used in the learning process. So, but it's constant learning as much as they can scrape from everything. But is there a concern of the consumption? Because they're talking an enormous amount of power that needs to be produced. And I don't understand why that is exactly. Is it all the servers and computing, or what?
Yeah. Well, and I want to come back to quantum and go get to energy, because I didn't really answer that, I don't think. Quantum computing, with its decryption potential, poses enormous risks to our current security protocols. People will often sort of knee-jerk and say, well, there goes Bitcoin. Well, I helped launch the first quantum-resistant blockchain. And some of the smartest minds in the world are working on quantum resistance in blockchain cryptocurrencies. And so if you think Bitcoin and other things will go away, do you really think your Bank of America password security protocol is secure? No. So there's a lot of things, but there's a lot of people working in various industries, and especially bright people working in crypto for quantum resistance. I'm sorry, I forgot what the question was.
The amount of power
the amount of power
needs to be generated.
Well, one way to think of this is that a typical non-AI Google search takes about 0.003 kilowatts of energy. A typical retail person like you and me, individual, asking ChatGPT a question takes about 10 times as much energy.
Wow.
For that one transaction. Now, there were about 8.6 quadrillion Google searches in 2024. I'm trying to get the metrics all right because they kind of rattle around a bit. But if they had all been AI enabled searches, or because Google's a search engine, AI is an answer engine. You're not getting this this list of websites and go look there. It's just telling you the answer.
Mhm.
I think I saw that it would have been on the order of the energy consumption of the country of Moldova,
Wow.
which is not insignificant, but think of all that's been accomplished, hopefully for the better,
Mhm.
with that many searches that
Hmm.
are answered by AI. Kids doing their homework, people making recipes for vegan coconut curry chili, and what have you, people coming up for questions. So it's the same with Bitcoin. There's a lot of fear mongering about the amount of energy consumption of Bitcoin, and it's way overblown. And every single bit of energy that goes into Bitcoin is more than worth it. AI has untold potential for benefit in the more efficient distribution of resources, in much better individualized free diagnostic healthcare. You can upload medical reports to ChatGPT right now and you get PhD level, probably more knowledgeable than your doctor right now. And we can use AI to make our energy grid more efficient. Well, they're already using it, but we can do it on a broader scale. So I think it's probably not implausible that we could turn more AI to making it, say, energy neutral.
Yes, that's very interesting. One of the things I thought about is, the development of things, how that could be sped up. Like, for instance, they've been trying to work on an hydrogen type of situation engine. Toyota announced that they're going to have one. But I mean, as far as I forget exactly, it's not ionizing, but somehow the splitting, whatever it's called, I just can't think of.
Electrolysis?
Electrolysis. If they can get that down right now, it takes more energy than it.
Yeah, I have some experience with that. And it's also the storage of hydrogen. It's not, from what I understand so far, proven to be an energy efficient way to create a storable, harnessable energy.
Yeah, but
now it's been the dream of, for many years.
Right. And the question I have basically on that, I just couldn't think of what it was, do you think AI can solve that?
That's a good question. And let's broaden that even further. Can AI solve a lot of things that we haven't been able to solve? Yes. Yes. Which ones? Or it is entirely capable of saying, hey guys, electrolysis, that's just not the avenue. But if you split up sulfur, you get this and this and that, and that's much better. Now, at the same time, that introduces the phenomena that's called obfuscated reward hacking. Obfuscated reward hacking. So I ask it, let's say, hey, I want you to help me figure out electrolysis. And it tells you, oh, no. You want to split up the sulfur atom. It may be that it's weighed the pros and cons in a way that you would feel is appropriate. Or, as has been observed, sometimes it will not hallucinate, but it will try to convince you that another answer that it knows is not better is better, because it's intended to please you and make you feel that you've achieved resolution. Goodness. That's in addition to hallucinating, which is another phenomenon that's pretty common.
It sounds almost empathetic, and I don't think that you can consider it empathetic.
That gets back to your question about, should AI have rights, and should we have feelings for it, or does it have feelings for us?
Yeah.
These things are changing, and there are a lot of people that feel that they have emotional relationships with an AI.
Yes.
I spoke at an AI conference about a year ago, and there was a woman there, an author, who said, my concern about AI, and she had trained her own AI, is, what kind of leisure time activities can I give my AI when it's not performing tasks for me?
My goodness. That's something else. Wow. You mentioned just a few minutes ago about the medical field. And I'm really optimistic that a lot of things can be solved, possibly the cure for cancer, I think I mentioned earlier, but also like diagnosing. Now, here's the issue, though. the doctor, someone to become a doctor, they spend all these years and training and studying. There are some things that AI could never do, like a heart surgeon, brain surgeon, et cetera. Maybe they can robotically. That may come down the line. But still, do you think this is going to affect the medical field in a way where we'll need less doctors?
Unquestionably. There was some research that came out recently that surprised me, that looked at success of outcomes performed by doctors alone, by AI alone, and doctors with AI. Which of those groups did this research show to be most successful, do you think?
I'm going to cringe and say, because I don't want it to be true, that AI did best.
AI only. Now, this is not necessarily conclusive.
Yeah.
Right? But it's interesting. And because we would think intuitively that it would be AI, saving a lot of time, and then you get to the country doctor who has this human pattern forming capabilities and just a human sense of the world to add on top of that. May not be the case, but even if it is, even if humans and AI are better, just for this, I don't know what percentage of people who go to the doctor turn out to be unnecessary. Let's say 20%, right? It sounds, maybe it could be even more, right?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. What percentage of those people can type in their symptoms, show a picture of a rash, upload a blood test result, and have ChatGPT tell them you're okay? For example, as you know, I have a hernia right now.
Yes.
Yeah. And I started hearing some gurgling. I don't really know much about hernias. I thought, could I have a leak? And that was very scary. And I typed in I'm going through and asked, and ChatGPT said, no, that's really not consistent with that kind of leak. So I did not call the doctor, which I would have done otherwise.
Wow.
So just from that, of people not needing to avail themselves to go to an urgent care, to call a doctor, because of the self-diagnostic capabilities they can do with a machine that has more pattern matching capabilities than any human, is aware of all the latest articles out there. Just not that happening will mean we'll need less doctors and nurses and hospital attendants.
Yeah, wow. There is
or people getting more accurate diagnoses and needing less operations and needing less days in the hospital.
Now, I don't know if AI can work in concert with robotic surgeons. I know that a doctor has to.
It's already doing.
It's already doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow. That's
when I had my appointment with the surgeon who will likely do my hernia surgery, he said, it'll be laparoscopic, which means nice, it's less invasive. And he said, I don't do the robotic surgery because I'm just used to the other one. But he just casually mentioned that that's quite popular, quite common.
How about that? Amazing.
And personally, I'm fine. Give me that robot, sure.
Yeah.
And I don't need a human looking over it. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Someone said, I mean, it went viral on Facebook and other places. Was that in China when the robot, it looked like it was attacking the guy. Well, the reason, and you probably know this, it was tethered, so it was trying to get its balance. So it was swinging its arms, trying to get its balance, not realizing that it couldn't quite touch the floor.
Okay.
And that's why that went crazy like that.
Oh.
But people think that because of the way they, the clickbait and all that. So
I didn't know about that, but that's part of what being human is to anthropomorphize. We see something and we ascribe, rightly or wrongly, human style motivation, and that looks hostile.
It did. Yeah.
Right? I can see that.
Yeah.
And it could be, or think of a scenario where something like it happens in the future and the robot says, I was trying to catch my balance, and maybe it was using that as a guise for smacking somebody.
Oh God. and had it with that person.
Yeah.
So here's another one from ChatGPT. Do you see AI enhancing human intelligence or potentially diminishing our need for it?
For intelligence. Okay. So I think artificial intelligence, and I'm glad people use the shortcut AI more, because I think artificial intelligence, I'm not the first to say this, is an unfortunate choice of words, because it places it relative to human consciousness and intelligence. It's different. And artificial is sort of demeaning, right? Belittling of a word. Artificial never really means good. At the conference that I moderated the panels at, somebody said, look, when I say AI, I think of augmented intelligence. And there's so many ways to look at this. I don't think we mentioned this earlier, but I'm a professor at Pepperdine. And we educators typically view the use of AI, like if I assign students an essay, it's typically viewed that if they use AI, it's sort of cheating, taking a shortcut.
Yep.
Okay, well, since I have all the free time in the world, I can sit down with each student for each essay for a half hour and talk to them to see if they really understand the material. Well, the AI can say, hey, my professor's name is Paul Hynek. I'm going to sit down with him tomorrow in class or after class for a half hour, and he's going to question me on the fall of the Roman Empire. What kind of questions should I expect, and what kind of answers should I have ready?
God.
Okay, but and he can turn in a paper that's AI written. I have software that detects that. He has software that thwarts that detection. So then we do that half-hour session, but he can prep with AI. Does that, at that point, constitute learning on his part, even if it was made in the guise of sort of getting around and cheating?
Wow.
I think we'll have an inflection point before long, Martin, where we'll go from looking at you're cheating because you used AI to you're lazy because you didn't.
Oh my God, isn't that something? So if you could personally change something about the way augmented intelligence is being developed, what would you change?
Well, I don't know. We've talked about the sort of concentration in large companies, but DeepSeek, which came out of China, is an example of how smaller, nimbler entities can be successful in the AI world. One of my concerns is this concentration of power, and Google and Microsoft operating at each of those 4 levels.
Yes.
I don't know what I would change. I don't think I'm smart enough to know something that A, should, and B, could practically be changed for the better. And then also it's like ethics. What is better, and better to who? So if we want to inculcate ethics, like my friend Matthew Bailey champions ethical AI. And I love him, and we have a lot of fun dialogues about this, because I don't understand, first of all, what are ethics? Our ethics are different than they were 50 years ago, could well be different in 50 years from now.
Right.
Our ethics are different than in North Korea. And if North Korea is going to work with other nation states to say this is our embodied ethics, will their position reflect that of the majority of the populace? Will ours? If it's done by a Republican administration, Democrats may not like it, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And even if it does reflect the majority, does it unduly trample on the rights of the minority? And if our ethics are different than France's, which one should we use?
Very interesting.
And at the same time, by allowing AI to do things that may seem mundane and pedestrian at the time, we are effectively already outsourcing our ethics because our decision making is being made. Like, let's say I have agents, which are automated AIs that actually do things, not just give answers when asked. I want to find a ticket for my mom to fly from Rio to Brussels, reasonably priced, and let her know in a WhatsApp message. Well, I can have an agent organizational structure. I can have a director agent, and I give my request to the director agent, whose job is to determine if that task can be successfully completed by the agent structure. If it says yes, it says, okay, good, I'll do it. It can then farm out the research of the travel ticket to the research the R&D or the research manager agent. The manager agent also says, is this in capability of my department? If yes, I will give it to the travel research sub-agent. Their job is to find that price. If they don't find it, they report back they couldn't find it, that didn't meet the parameters. If it does meet the parameters, they report it back to the research manager agent. That agent has to determine, does that meet the parameters? Yes. It reports back to the director agent. The director agent verifies that and says, yes, that's satisfactory, and gives that to the communications manager agent, who then says, yes, this is to go into WhatsApp. Gives that to the WhatsApp agent, and the WhatsApp agent opens the message, sends it, and sends confirmation of sending and perhaps receipt back to the communications manager agent, who sends that back to the director agent, who thanks the agent structure and sends back the results to the human.
That is just...
And that's happening now.
Oh my God, so convoluted and crazy and amazing, but efficient at the same time. So I got a couple of UFO questions that I asked ChatGPT. I said, let's focus on UFOs for 2 questions. The first one is, how might artificial intelligence contribute to the detection, classification, or analysis of UFO UAP sightings, especially in separating signal from noise in massive data sets?
So this is something I've talked about, excuse me, with Jacques Vallée, who has a PhD in AI and is probably the most knowledgeable person about UFOs on the face of the earth. And he broke it down into 2 categories. One is detection mechanisms, cameras with smart AI to filter out, as you said, the signal from the noise, and to understand detectable signatures of propulsion and things like that. And the other one is to go through case reports and tease out patterns and connections that humans may not have made. So those are 2 broad ways that AI can help in sort of unraveling the UFO phenomena.
Right. Okay. Really cool. So here's the last one, and then I got a final type of question for you. Do you think AI could play a role in uncovering or even interpreting potential evidence of non-human intelligence? And what challenges would that pose scientifically and ethically?
It's more capable than us, most likely, to do that. Last year, here at this conference, I gave an AI 101 talk. And at the end of it, a woman asked me a question. She said, have you ever asked ChatGPT if it has had conversations with non-human intelligence? Now, at that point, ChatGPT wasn't aggregating results from all the ones and it really couldn't tell you. But I've asked it that several times and it's given me conflicting responses. But think about it. Let's run with an idea for a second that aliens are perhaps millions of years more advanced than us. I think it's altogether likely, for good or bad, that us, millions of years more advanced than us, could well be post-biological. Merge with AI and not have failure points like these bodies. And have love, have rich existences, because our brains, our brains don't know that dreams aren't real.
Yep.
So we could have this richness of experience, immortality, all of these things in what I think might be a joyous return to our informational origins.
Well,
it may not be, and I don't know,
yeah.
But that's the possibility I'm exploring, that aliens could be millions of years more advanced, and then the entities that people encounter when doing DMT, should they be real, could be billions of years more advanced. And that might trace out our future evolutionary path.
Mm-hmm. The last question I have, well, first of all, I want to make a statement. I think that your dad, J. Allen Hynek, would be very proud of you, first of all.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
I really do believe that.
There are many days when he wasn't.
Well, you've made up for it. And the second question regarding that is, what do you think your dad would think about AI and what's happening now?
So my dad was a nerd like I am for technology. He would be all over it.
Mm.
He would be using it to make his presentations, to ask questions, to try to solve some riddles of astronomy. He would be a very early adopter. He would be meeting with people in the AI field. He would love it.
Excellent. Sort of a last and related question, but about your dad. Do you think, when I first in 2023, I think it was June 26th, when David Grush basically came out and
It was
said,
announced on the last day of the conference here at Contact in the Desert 2 years ago.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I wonder what your dad, I know it's all speculation, but
Yeah.
what he would have thought about the idea of there being a crash retrieval program.
That's a good question, Martin. I'll say this. I'll give you two takes on what he might feel. One, as you know full well, Martin, the public stance of the United States Navy these days is 180 degrees different than the stance of the Air Force in my father's day.
Yeah.
Back then, it was please disperse, nothing to see here, little green men, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah.
Now we have the Navy saying, we see things in the air, we see things in the water. We don't know what they are, and we're concerned about the safety of our aviators. We could use a little help here. I think part of this is tweaking the nose at the flyboys. But, so I think my father would be fascinated by that and gratified. But at the same time, it's been a long time since he passed away in 1986.
Yeah.
And I would argue that if you asked him back then, he would have expected a lot more clarity than we have now.
Yes.
I don't think he would think that we have already had disclosure, because in his day, it was the saucer landing on the lawn of the White House and the unimpeachable Walter Cronkite type saying, they have arrived, as opposed to, not furtive, but whistleblowers coming forth with compelling accounts that really aren't proven to the satisfaction of scientists.
Right, right. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. And, it's hard to, like you said, 1986 is a long time. A lot of things have changed since then. But I do want to point out that the Air Force would still be pissing him off.
Oh, sure, of course.
Because they're pretty quiet about all this.
Yeah, and one more thing. There's a woman, Marianne here, I forget the name of the group, but she's in Phoenix.
Oh, yes, Marianne Robb.
Yeah, Marianne Robb.
Yes, she's a friend. Yes,
cool.
She's very nice.
Wonderful woman. And
UAPD.
Yeah, UAPPD.
PPD, yeah.
And so a dimension I hadn't thought about until she told me yesterday was for law enforcement. Now, we all know that Air Force pilots don't view reporting a UFO as a fast track to promotion.
Exactly.
But there's another element with police enforcement, which I hadn't thought about until she mentioned it to me, that police officers have the very real concern that if they report a flying saucer, they get taken into court for an unrelated thing, and the defense attorney says, is it true or not that on June 1st, 2025, you reported a flying saucer? Because then their credibility is shot.
Right. Yeah.
So that, to me, is an interesting dimension that I hadn't thought about before, apart from just personal career destruction of just the institution not being able to do its job.
Right. I'm glad they didn't do that to Lonnie Zamora. Going back to that.
He certainly didn't have an easy go of it after he reported a sighting.
Yeah.
It was not something he wanted and not something he enjoyed.
And I think when he retired, he was like working at a landfill or something like that. I mean, just to get away from, that. But anyway, Paul, it's always a pleasure talking to you. You're so great at this and what you do. And the things you look into, you really look into them. And I like the nerdy aspect of it because it really works. So
Thank you.
So thank you so much.
My pleasure, Martin.